Okay, let's start. Jeff, very nice of you to come to us from Toronto, you are, right?
Yeah.
So today's topic is actually presenting a little bit about your keynote as well as some thoughts from your book, of course, and how it connects back to the next conference. We have some very nice guests here, but I'm not going to introduce all of them, so I'll give you afterwards a nice overview, and we will send you that by email. So for somebody who might never have heard about your book, and you can pronounce it very nicely in German as well, what would be the key essence of your book, and how does it really relate, for example, to your keynote, which is about the Great Restructuring?
Ja. Auf Deutsch ist das, was würde Google tun? Es tut mir leid, dass mein Deutsch so schlimm ist. Leider muss ich Englisch sprechen. Zu viele Jahre, zu viel vergessen. So, schade. The idea behind the book is that we're going through tremendous changes, fundamental changes, and that they're very confusing and counterintuitive. And the way to try to understand them is to look at the world through the lens of Google and just try to reverse engineer and see what made them successful and see what we can learn from that and how we can apply that to other industries, from auto industry to newspapers to universities to restaurants to government. And I think that it's all the more important given the financial crisis, because we're going through something more than a financial crisis, or even different from a recession or a depression. Umair Haque, who's a brilliant economist in London, says it's a compression, that the perceived value of the economy is meeting the real value. Now, I think it's a fundamental restructuring. We're really entering the post-industrial age, and for the first time starting to learn what that means. And when we think digitally, things operate differently. So Google became the fastest growing company in the history of the world, according to the Times of London, not because it bought up everything or owns and controls everything. It doesn't want to own things. It wants to organize them. Google grew by creating platforms and networks, and when others succeed, it succeeds. That's a fundamentally different way to do business, and it's one of the many ways, I think, that one of the many lessons we can learn from watching Google.
But isn't Google just an American company who just is hyping in the internet sphere? Does it really have a relevance outside of, for example, America? Do you hear that?
70-some% search in the US. Even if it's not Google, Google represents a different architecture of society and the economy. And how it takes advantage of that is a lesson for all of us. So even in countries like Russia, where Google is not number one, the realities of the internet are still coming to bear. Or in India, I was just reading a story about the need for new business models, even there where newspapers are still growing. So I think the lessons, the changes are universal. They're happening in a slightly different time frame, but they're happening absolutely everywhere. Look at the problems in Germany that the regional papers are having. What's going on with the advertising marketplace, what's going on worldwide in the auto industry. This change is sweeping the world.
As you mentioned, worldwide, it's a great topic. We have this year the first time where I think all of the program is in English up until now. Let's say 90% of the program is in English, which is a change, of course, also for the German market, to suddenly realize there is an outside world and everything is interwoven with one another. And share economy works actually on a worldwide basis. As you said, it's a restructuring which is worldwide, which goes through different countries. When I ask you quite frankly, what share economy does, what does it mean to you? What's an example where you say, this is really where I can tell you this is about a different world and it's about, for example, sharing?
The link makes that possible to share that much. I think if you look at, for example, about.com, it gets 80% of its traffic from Google, 50% of its advertising. It's a company that is enabled by Google. Open source, obviously, is all about sharing. I look too at bots at DevEston and what Nissa Bochert is doing there, and doing some amazing things that, as you say, the problem with these discussions is they too often happen only in one country, and of course Americans think there isn't a world around them. But we have a lot to learn from experiments that are happening all around the world. What's desperately needed now is experiments in new models. So what VOTS is doing with DevEston is enabling people and communities to come on and have their own pages and share their own personal blogs elsewhere, what they do at VOTS, their friendships, all kinds of things like that. When people share what they know online, what they care about online, that's a social act, and they're doing it to connect with other people. Now, the argument I always have with Germans is, or not the argument, but the discussion is, why hasn't blogging taken off in Germany the way it has elsewhere? And I've heard 100 theories. I still don't know why not. But I still think that through Twitter, YouTube, events, we're moving toward a new culture that cuts across boundaries, and it is about sharing.
Absolutely. And before we open it up for some questions from the room, from your perspective, you're also not 21 anymore, so over the last years... over the last years...
That's prematurely gray, the beard, prematurely.
So perhaps over the last years, and especially because you know both business as well as the journalism world very good, what are some of the key changes you've seen before we go into the discussion, especially in regards between America and Europe?
That's a good question, which is always a way to buy time while you figure out an answer. During the bubble, I came to Germany a lot, and I invested my employer's money in some businesses there. For example, I don't know if anyone in the room remembers Cassiopeia, the chat company. May it rest in peace. But what I found was that whether it's things like today YouTube to 7load, I've found that the German market is very good, always has been, at recognizing trends elsewhere, learning the lessons, learning from the mistakes that others make, and starting new and better products. The challenge always in the German market is whether or not the market is big enough. And we have to find the business models that work at different scales. But I think there are opportunities to start to share and cooperate across boundaries. And we haven't done enough of that. That's why things like the next conference I think are good, because you bring together people who can start to do business together and find critical mass worldwide, if that's an answer.
Absolutely, it's fine. Any questions from the room? I'm going to listen to it and I'm going to translate it for you, hopefully. Mark would like to know, is like, if we think of Google, what in this specific financial crisis Google could do if they had any kind of political impact or connection, or do they actually have, for example, already these kind of connection? And also, what could we expect when we think about in the way of what would Google do, especially according to this financial crisis?
Yeah, I think one answer, you're asking two questions. One is what Google itself will do, and two is what others can do learning lessons from Google. Google itself is very powerful, but only so powerful. I think what it's already doing is enabling a new economy. And anyone can go and start a new business on top of Google and Amazon hosting and open stores with eBay and so on. And I think that that's the first lesson, is that you just take advantage of what's there. Whether Google itself should be a force in Washington, well, it's starting. It lobbied to try to open up the internet more and broadband more. If in both our countries everyone were connected to broadband as people are in Korea, what invention and entrepreneurship would come from that? I think part of the problem with the discussion of financial bailouts is that we're bailing out the past when we should bail out the future. We're bailing out old models and trying to preserve them longer than they necessarily deserve to live. And we've got to make the tough changes to invent new things. And Google simply provides a platform on top of which we can do that.
Yeah, it's good. Mark? Any more questions? The question basically is like, sharing economy is a nice phrase, but it begs the question if we will share not only the wins but also the losses, and currently we're also very much sharing the losses. Do you see any working models where this topic of we do share and we make new kinds of money in the new models, as you mentioned them, would there be examples from you where you say they really do it right?
They being Google?
Well, besides Google maybe, because yes, Google is making money, but at the same time it's still a very basic business model behind it. But are there other examples of where this share economy actually works?
Oh, yeah, I think so, but I think it's just beginning. Recognize that yes, you're absolutely right. There's more risk for each person who starts something. Starting something is risky, but staying with where we have been, as it turns out, also to be risky. We thought that was safe, and it's not. Consider this example. Let's say that the 5 leading car companies in the world were suddenly opened up and created an API, a programming interface for cars. They created a specification so that I could disaggregate the car. It doesn't all come from one manufacturer. I can buy the car put together the car I want with the seat from here and the radio from there and the engine from there and so on. Well, in that case, the large car company would have less risk. It would be less investing in the whole and having to control everything, which it cannot afford to do anymore. Same with the newspaper. A newspaper cannot afford to do everything in the community anymore, and it's going to have to operate in a network. And the internet enables it to do so. It enables it to aggregate and find the best and promote it and sell ads across it and benefit at a lower risk.
Yeah. Well, he mentioned that it's very important to prove actually that those new models work and get them out and present them in the public to convince everybody. And I would like to put an additional question, because I think sharing success and also seeing that it works is one thing. But do you think that the old economy and the old models, the guys at the top, the old boys network, are they already ready for this new world of this restructuring, which also means restructuring of power?
I think that's an excellent and important question. I went to Davos for the third time in January, and I kind of realized when I was there that, you asked the question, were we among the people who are going to be the solution or among the people who created the problem? Probably the problem. And we need new voices and new ideas. And as I don't know who just asked the question, but as you said, we need to start creating these models and experimenting with them. And we are going to fail, but time is wasting. So I look at newspapers and news more than anything else, because that's my business. But we need to be trying new models desperately so we can learn from them, and then we need to share. I'm running at the university where I teach, the City University of New York, a project in new business models for news to find those models, find the experience with them, create new models, work through the finances completely and share those. So the more that people start to try these new things, the more we will learn what works and what doesn't.
Ja, aber zeigen ist definitiv noch weitere Fragen. I think we have currently all a question answered. We are very much looking forward to your keynote about the great restructuring. We are putting that on the program right away, so everybody's looking forward to that. And thank you, Jeff, very much for your time.
Vielen Dank, Carla.
Thank you.
Tschüss.
Bye.